Good evening, family, friends, colleagues, comrades. I greet you in the name of the Lord. Tonight we have our second forum of three. Our theme is from resiliency to recovery, and we're excited about tonight. My name is Michael Lynn Moore. I am the African American Intercultural Associate for Presbyterian Mission Agency's Department of Racial Equity's Women's Ministry. In the forum tonight, we will be having with us Dr. Giovanni Rondo, and she'll be coming on soon. So just kind of the theme, the orientation of where we're going with our forums. This is the second forum. We know the historical legacy of racism and the Middle Passage and chattel slavery up into the devaluation of Black human bodies. We know about the history of slave codes. We know about the lynchings that the people had suffered through traumas. We know about coming up to the protest in the 60s. And we know about the evolution of fighting for equal rights. And we even know about the recent protest that's been going the last few years in the whole context we're in. And one of the things we wanted to lift up was about, yes, the power of resiliency, but also recovery. We need new coping skills in our lives for BIPOC communities' well-being. And so this is why we've been doing these forums. Tonight, we have Dr. Rondo, and we're going to be giving her bio in just a minute. But I have my colleague with me right now, Alex Zerf. She's going to greet you and give you a few words, and then we're going to bring our Dr. Rondo on. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Brother Michael, thank you. And welcome to everybody tuning in tonight. We are so grateful for this conversation. It's so timely. It's so timely. We are surviving a collective trauma. We are going through so much. So this is a really important conversation. How do we honor what's happened? How do we honor where we are? And how do we even envision what's coming next, right? And so we're going to have to just have these kinds of conversations and stretch a little bit and get comfortable, right? And maybe think about what's coming next. And we're so excited about our guest. Yes. She's so awesome. She's going to help us just kind of expand the conversation. And so assuming technology is on our side, I will get out of the way and have Michael take it away so you can introduce her to us.
All right. Thank you, sis. Appreciate it so much. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, and you all, we have with us Dr. Giovanni Rondo. I'm going to do her bio. It's a long and extensive one, but it's an important one. Dr. Rondo will come and give her presentation. We do want you to know you'll have an opportunity in the chat while you're there. If you have some questions and comments, we hope to have time at the end so Dr. Rondo can entertain some of those things. But we're going to have a wonderful presentation and a wonderful dialogue tonight. So let me start a little bit with her bio. Dr. Rondo was born and raised in West Louisville. She's practiced medicine for over 20 years. When not working, she volunteers with her church, emergency medical response team, and works with what's called Food Not Bombs, a food pickup and delivery service. And she provides community health discussions at local schools and libraries, from community to family, and cooking, traveling. She's fully committed to a vibrant, healthy lifestyle for all. We say that. Some of her educational background: she graduated from DuPont Manual High School in Louisville, magna cum laude, and 1989, Spelman, Atlanta, Georgia, cum laude. 1994, University of Louisville School of Medicine, in 1999. And she is board certified as an internist, and she has an entrepreneurial spirit, and she now is CEO of Go Bio Med, and she's the founder, which is very dynamic because she goes to her patients. She has also volunteered her services. She is co-founder of the medical director of St. Stephen's Baptist Church Emergency Medical Response Team. She volunteers her heart to Habitat for Humanity. She was the coordinator, one of the coordinators of Kentuckian Hypertension Campaign, and she's the founder of Kentuckian African Americans Women's Physicians Group. She volunteers at Hope Clinic Response Team, so much more. But here's what I really like. The presentation she gives, many of them heart disease in African American women. This is the one I like. How to live to 100. You got to talk about that. Hypertension in the African American community. Holiday eating. Cervical cancer presentations. Tobacco use. On and on and on. I won't hold it up. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and families, with no further ado, I give you Dr. Giovanne D. Rondo. Welcome.
Wow. Whew. Thank you so much for that introduction. It was just a lot. I'm not used to hearing all the different things that I've done, but thank you.
You're welcome.
That's very warm and welcoming introduction. And excuse me. But one thing that I just want to say, I just appreciate this opportunity to talk about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, literally, rest, restoration, and reconciliation for holistic health in the African American community. And I want to say just right off the bat, I wish I'd have had this talk, a week and a half ago, just needing to rest and being restored and reconciled. Because unfortunately, I suffered an injury that came from just trying to do too much, trying to multitask, and but I've been forced to actually rest. So this is actually pretty appropriate, at least at this point. And I would like to just say that, I am going to be talking about this topic, but I really want this to be a conversation. I don't want to just be talking over people. I really want this to be a conversation where we can just discuss issues. Consider this a time frame when, you're able to just sit down and talk with a doctor just about, really anything, but, we're really going to focus on, the topic of holistic health in the African American community and why it's, just so vitally important. The very first step, though, is just recognition. Just recognizing how important this topic really is, how important the aspect of health is, and just rest in and of itself. And I can say, as a physician, as a mom, it's a lot. It really is a lot. And so for our community, just being aware of the importance of rest is truly vital. Not long ago, I just happened to be in a place where I was burnt out, completely burnt out on my responsibilities as a full-time physician and also as a mom. And I'm actually parenting in kind of a difficult and different situation with my daughter. And then not to mention all the other extracurricular activities that I have going on, family, extended family, civic, and then church responsibilities. So I had to wrestle my rest by decreasing my work hours and asking for help, things that are really hard to do, just plain and simply asking for help and taking that rest that I absolutely needed. And then just making a decision to do my life differently. So that's, a part of my story and a part of the initial topic of, rest, restoration, and reconciliation. But on a more global perspective, the story of African Americans in the United States is absolutely beautiful, but complex. We have a history within the African continent and other areas, but focus on the African continent, of beauty, strength, and greatness. That has been overshadowed by the Middle Passage, slavery, lynching, Jim Crow, inequality, injustice, poverty, mass incarceration, drugs, fights for freedom, riots, redlining, gun violence, predatory tactics, voter suppression, police brutality, microaggressions, and now COVID.
Mm.
Whew, I'm tired just reading that. Just taking a deep breath. I just, just thinking about it, just talking about those different topics it's so negative. It's just has such a negative vibe. And it actually, as a physician, I think of how it increases the cortisol in my system, and increases my blood pressure and heart rate and all of that. And actually that suppresses your immune system as well. So it's really not beneficial to the body. And we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later. That's one of the reasons why rest is so vitally important to health and well-being. Being able to have time away, have solitude where you can recharge is essential for thriving in life, not just merely surviving. We want to thrive. And in one of the, I think one of the slides that I have, there are I mentioned various types of rest: time away, solitude to recharge, break from responsibility, connecting with art and nature, being still, being alone, having alone time at home, and then just permission to not be helpful. So all those are different types of rest. And I thought, it was just kind of interesting, just doing a little bit of research. We think of rest, okay, just going to bed and going to sleep. But there are different types of rest that are vitally important for us to restore ourselves. And when it comes to, the next aspect is restoration. Restoration, as a definition, is the act of repairing or renewing something, the action of returning something to a former owner, condition, or position. Now, we as African Americans may not be going back to, exactly the way that our worlds were many centuries ago. But where we are now is a mixture of African with other races by genetics, culture, and history, and American by land, familiarity, and also part of the culture. And then just imagine what that's like when we really know what our people have done and what we've been through, good and bad. How we can be restored fully by knowing more of our history. But at the same time, like I mentioned before, it's a little bit complex. Thinking about all the negativity can be very draining on us mentally and physically in a lot of ways. So what do we do? I think a healthy balance of that is vitally important for us to, be restored truly to more healthy, a healthier aspect of our wellness. And then finally, reconciliation, because I don't want to just talk. I want for us to have a conversation. But that aspect is next. And that is where the definition, the act of groups or two people becoming friendly again after an argument or a disagreement. And that we get to that point where, we are reconciled to, our life, to others, but most importantly to God, to what He has for us and for our lives. But it starts with rest. It starts with the awareness of the importance of getting rest. That allows us to be restored. And then that eventually will allow us to be reconciled. I can go into, a little bit more detail, just overall, but I really wanted to, to kind of open up the discussion and really have, any questions that anyone has.
Yes. Yeah, Dr. Ryan, that's important to sit on. I was just thinking about, especially the difference between sleep and rest. Because sometimes we sleep, but we're not rested.
Absolutely.
And, so it kind of it lifts up again the whole oneness and necessity about well-being is that all of me has to rest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but I mean, coming from a physician standpoint, it's like I realized that most of the people I talk in communities, it's a big issue with. They say I sleep, but I don't rest.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm,
So there are different phases of sleep. There's different, there's, you have, when you initially are going into your sleep, and then there's a middle portion, and there's what we call REM, or rapid eye movement. And
mm,
that's generally where most of your dreams occur. And that's where when you're getting more of the deeper sleep. But what you do is you end up cycling through that. And some people, whether they have, issues that they're worried about, issues like sleep apnea, that can definitely affect your quality and quantity of sleep and really getting that true rest. So sleep is just, it you should be getting rest when you're sleeping, but like you're saying, you may not be able to get that full physical rest if you are worried about
right.
something, and if you have issues with sleep apnea that's not controlled, because sleep apnea is a condition where you actually stop breathing, and your body, it doesn't wake up fully, but it wakes up enough so that you continue the cycle of breathing again. And so you actually have what they call micro arousals. So you don't get a
Micro.
full, you don't get really into that full deep sleep like you should, in that deep rest that you know.
Yeah, doctor. Yeah, doctor. So we got a question that came in around this, Doctor Rhonda. One of the questions is it possible to feel withdrawal symptoms when we stop from all the rushing and rushing and going and going and going and going? They're asking, is it possible to have withdrawal systems? Interesting question.
Okay. So withdrawal from just the going and the going. Well, absolutely. If your body is used to going, and it's used to just going at 100 miles an hour, it is somewhat difficult to go from 100 to 0, just like that. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it's strictly termed withdrawal, but your body may have difficulty kind of putting a stop, really saying going from 100 to 0. And it may take time to really get you where you feel more comfortable with that aspect of being at 0.
Hmm. All right. There's another question that's come on, and this is kind of very, very relevant because I was just talking today with a friend of mine who is approaching retirement, and to come to find out her son's children were abandoned, and he asked her. Of course, he's spending some time in the criminal justice system. He asked her, would he look out for her children? So here she is, like getting ready to retire, and she's got these two young children. But this is relevant to this question. Here's the question. There's a question in chat about feeling responsible for the care of others, feeling responsible for the cares of others. And sometimes, and as we know, as a people, sometimes we have the propensity sometimes to take on a whole lot more because we feel we have to. So there's the question, Dr. Rondo. Feeling responsible for the care of others.
Well, that's a really a great question. And one of the things that we have that I've seen in our culture is that we tend to have a little bit more of a village mentality, and we take care of others, especially those in need, the young or the old, or I should say just people who have certain potential disabilities, or who have certain needs. And so I think that's a beautiful thing for our culture. Excuse me. I think that that's a really a beautiful thing, to have that village kind of mentality.
Okay.
But I think that one of the things that's very important for us to remember is just that word village. Village means more than one person. And I think that sometimes we have that strong person mentality. Okay, I can do it all by myself, when we really should take on that village. So a prime example for myself is when I unfortunately injured my wrist. I fractured my wrist. I was trying to do a whole lot of different things. So it had, and this is my dominant hand, and this is what I do everything with is my right side. It has absolutely forced me to utilize my village. So I have had to have my daughter wash dishes, which is what I'm always doing. She has had to take up more responsibility in our household. I've had to have other family members to help with my daughter. I've had to tell at my employer or places that I've, do work that I just cannot utilize that hand as well. So I'm going to need some assistance. And that's very hard to do. It's hard to ask for help. And so I would say with this interest, with this particular issue with taking care of grandchildren, is that yes, you could potentially do just that to help, but you yourself may need help as well. And consider, the village, consider other
Mhm.
people to actually help.
Mhm.
So that's one thing that I would say.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
other thing is,
yeah.
there's not a problem with sometimes saying no, or um, that that your capabilities are limited.
Mhm. Yeah,
And that's very important.
yeah. And I think I was trying to ask you this before when we were talking about um, when do we since we take on so much, how do we become more accountable for our own well-being? We know about all the disparities and all the hindrances in access to health and economic issues, but what is the space for us to think of ourselves? I always think about the scriptures that says, "Your body is a temple for God," and how something I need to have more respect for my temple
Mhm.
and to raise that to a level of awareness where is that I actually am accountable for my temple and taking care of it. And so besides from the medical system, where's the space, or how do we get to the space for being accountable for this temple and to really, invest? I mean, all the things that the people tell us to do. Of course, we should eat well, nutrition, should exercise, we should do all these things. As African Americans, as a group, when do we get to this space that we actually value the temple enough to take time to invest?
Absolutely, just absolutely wonderful question. And you said it. The scripture, talks about the temple and how that is important. So we have to remember that God made the temple. Okay. So what he made is fearfully and wonderfully made. I think that's Psalm 139. And so when you think of that, think of how he took his time to make us. And so we need to remember that we were fearfully and wonderfully made. And so we need to we're not going to worship this temple. We're not going to bow down to this temple, but we're going to take care of what God has given us. And before we can take care of someone else, we need to take care of ourselves. I would be amiss if I, did everything and didn't put food in my body, didn't you know, take care of me before I could, do the things that I do for other people, for my daughter, for my extended family, for my patients. I have to feed myself. If I'm coming out of an empty cup, I can't pour out of an empty cup. I have to fill myself. Now, that doesn't mean that I focus so much on myself all the time, but I still need to regenerate myself to be able to give and to do and serve others in the most optimal way. And I think it's not only physically, but it's also mentally and spiritually. If you are just mentally tapped out, if you just, how are you able to help someone else? So you have to kind of help yourself, and not just help yourself. You have to actually ask God, ask him to help you. So I think that there's a certain amount of humility, humbleness that you have to, you have to say, yes, I am this person, but I'm human and I deserve certain things that allow me to optimize myself. And knowing that God will give you all the things that you need is number one. I think a lot of times we do have this, oh, I can do it myself and I can, and I'm my own person, and you are, but we have to remember, especially as Christians, that God gives us what we really, everything that we need. We can depend on him. And when he gave us our bodies, when he made us, we should take care of what he has actually made.
Yeah. Yes. Another question, kind of piggybacking on this whole thing about being responsible for others, and I guess it's more of a kind of a mind-body thing, because we know the question is this: how do we release ourselves from this feeling of being responsible for? Let me put it this way: it says others, but I'll say everybody. Sometimes you're going back to that, my friend who had to confront this issue of taking on these children in retirement. It's like having to make this critical choice, and yet you got your grandchildren there who otherwise would be turned over to the system. And this critical choice you got to make through enjoying after so many years of your hard work and labor, and now you got to raise some grandchildren. So how do we release ourselves to make the kind of choices necessary for our own well-being? So that's a piggyback on one of the questions. And then we got another one related that to stress.
Okay. Well, I think that, again, recognizing, just having that awareness of how important it is to take care of ourselves. And yes, it sounds like, the person has a certain way that they want to continue their life. But sometimes, there's detours in our lives that occur. And I think the way that we can think about it is more like, okay, these things have occurred. So Lord, how can I deal with this? What can I do? How can I make this optimal for all of us involved? And really ask God, okay, well, Lord, what are you showing me? What do I need to do? You're not in there. One thing that I want to express is that they're not there by themselves, that God is with you no matter where you are, no matter what stage, whether it's retirement or starting your career, end of life, beginning of life. He is there for you, with your children, with your grandchildren, wherever. And I think that one of the things is maybe even considering, changing the aspect of how you even look at it. Like, okay, there's, these children, but this is an opportunity also to have a relationship with them. And so maybe changing just the mindset of how you're even looking at it also may help. But again, having that opportunity to have them is wonderful, but also there may need to be some tough choices made. There may need to be, okay, we talk about the system, or maybe there's maybe other relatives that could help, or other avenues also.
Right. Well, obviously, it's related to the question of, increased stress. And someone's asking about, how do we deal with stress? I mean, it's like we know now, right? The stress is really not out there. It's in us, right? I hope I'm right, doctor. That stress is actually in our bodies. And so what are some ways that we can pull back from how we think about stress and what stress is doing? How can we pull back from the stress in a way that it doesn't really begin to affect us emotionally and bodily? There are some ways that we can just manage our stress. Is one of the piggyback questions here. Ways to pull back from stressful situations. Maybe we can use this one. Maybe we can use this one about talking about my friend in this situation about, okay, you've taken on a tremendous responsibility because your heart, and you're going to open up and you're going to take on this responsibility. There's going to be a whole lot of stress. But how can we manage that stress? What are ways we can do practically to manage that stress?
So another great question. Stress, unfortunately, is something that we all are going to deal with. And then there's actually some benefit to a certain amount of stress. Like if, say, for instance, there's a tiger that comes in and, we're going to be stressed enough so that our, adrenaline's going to kick in, and cortisol and epinephrine and all of that's going to kick in, and we're going to run. But having that constant stress, that's really the problem and the issue. And so there's different ways of dealing with stress. And there's, different people have different, manifestations of it. Some people, their heart races. Some people, their thoughts race. They, just may feel chest pain. They may feel very tired. I mean, there's, you can physically feel it, but then sometimes you may, have it on the inside where, or you may mentally be just thinking about it.
Mhm.
And so one of the best ways, or there's so many different ways to help you to deal with stress, but one of the best ways that I've found for my own self is to just sit back and take nice deep breaths. The best that you possibly can in the situation. Taking nice deep breaths in and then breathing out. So deep breathing techniques that helps. Exercise on a regular basis helps us to deal with stress. Prayer, as we, can, as we all, probably are doing, does help.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to talk with positive people can also help. And I specifically say positive people because sometimes it can be more stressful to talk with people who are more negative, more downers, or who may even add to our stressors. So we kind of have to be careful kind of who we talk to and who we deposit some of our inner, feelings towards. So just, using a certain amount of discernment and discretion can be important for that. Journaling, physically writing down their stress. I know that a couple of times just in my own personal life, writing down what is going on, like putting it on paper, because sometimes just mentally here, there's so much and it's overwhelming. And it's like, okay, let me just write it down on paper. And it literally is almost like a valve has been released. But journaling does help people to deal with stress as well. There's so many different, so I'm just kind of throwing out.
Yeah, I hear you. Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I was thinking about just some practical things like all right, just weight, managing weight. So it's like, what a battle.
Yeah. Well, that's where a part of like the exercise would help.
Mhm.
And, I know sometimes that gets a bad rap talking about exercise, but I like to even think of it as just movement, dance, stretch, bicycle, swim, walk your dog. Actually, pets have a way of helping us deal with stress. So if you have a dog like I do,
Okay.
that will really help you to deal with stress. Unless your dog, like my dog, likes to dig under our fence and run away every chance you possibly can get. So yeah, that can be stressful. So
Right.
so,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, so pets have a way of allowing us to deal with our stressors.
Mhm.
Let's see, I mentioned dancing. That can help some people. One of the things that I enjoy, like hobbies are fun things to do. Like if you like to knit, some people like to sing. But one of the things that's one of my favorite things I enjoy, and I cannot do it with this risk, is I love playing Miss Pac-Man. So I've done that ever since it came out back in the 80s. So, or maybe even the late 70s. Yeah, I think it came out like, I have to research it, but I love it. I love playing this Pac-Man, and so when I have an opportunity to get back to it, I'm gonna do just
Right.
that. So it's like a great stress reliever for me. So
Yeah. So I have to ask you, so like, so we've been in this pandemic situation for a while, and a lot of isolation, tons of isolation.
mhm,
And I
yes.
wonder, we've been talking about resiliency, but I wonder that, like, um, not being so strong that you don't ask for help. So there's a resiliency component, but this isolation that we're dealing with and the impact, adults, children. Um, what are some of the ways that we can offset this ice?
Mm.
Because we have to be, in many sense, just isolated. What are some ways, some of the things that we can do to offset this isolation?
Mhm. Yeah, another great question. This whole pandemic is just this is a once in a lifetime, type of issue. Unless you're like my grandmother, she'll be 105 in a couple of months, and she was
Wow.
in the pandemic of let me see, the Spanish flu back in 1917, 1918. And so, but yeah, this is a once in a lifetime for most of us, hopefully, kind of occurrence. And it's unprecedented. So just recognizing it is important. First
Hmm.
and foremost, that isolation, and that our lives have changed so much, and that it's really for everyone.
Hmm.
So how do we deal with it? So there's different ways that we can help. Things like these type of sessions, really being open and honest, facing it, um, talking about it, making sure that we open up that window or that opportunity to just talk, just discuss. This is in a different venue. I'm sure, like most of you, like most of us,
Yeah,
we had never heard of Zoom before all of this. So just having this opportunity and know we're not, right next to each other, but we can talk to each other, we can relate, we can, just discuss our issues. And that does help, just being able to have someone else to talk to.
absolutely.
That's one thing.
Mhm.
Getting outdoors, if you possibly can. I know the weather isn't the greatest, especially today, it's raining here. So, but getting outdoors does help, just out in nature. And that's one of the things that I did mention about in terms of the rest, um, connecting with nature, but also connecting with art. So trying to be somewhat, artistic, not necessarily, trying to draw everything, but just connecting with that can actually
Absolutely.
help as well. If you have a pet, that may help. So just
Yeah,
really trying to connect in some type of way
yeah,
with that isolation, and just
yeah,
we're all going through this too.
yeah. I had to take another look at it and stop calling it isolation and say it's solitude, which is a space I needed to reconnect. And so that was one way that I've been getting through it. It's just that no, this is a period God's carved out for solitude, and so I should respect that. We got another question here. How much? This is a good one. How much water should we be drinking, Doctor? Compatible is should we limit alcohol? Um, I don't think, but anyway, let's do the water. How much water should we be drinking? And
That's
how does that enhance our well-being?
Yes, water is your friend. Water is your friend. That's for sure. And the more water that you drink, it allows so many opportunities for your body to rejuvenate itself, to flush out impurities, and to just, get the things that it really does need for optimal well being. We are made of about approximately 70% water. So, the amount of water that you actually need on a daily basis really does depend on several things: your age, your gender, your activity levels, and also if you have any what we call comorbid conditions, like someone who's has diabetes and whose blood sugars are a little bit higher are going to maybe need a little bit more water just to kind of help them, as opposed to
Yeah.
someone who you know does not have diabetes or blood sugars are normal. um, Someone who is very active who, like my daughter, she plays basketball. So she, on those days that she plays basketball, and that she is, she's going to need more water. So it really does depend. For the most part, I like to tell people that at least having several glasses of water a day, about 8 ounces, is very important for their overall health and well-being. But you're going to get a certain amount of water within, fruits and vegetables as well. So, but if you're very, very active, I would say more. If you're not as active, a little bit less. But even that depends on, how big you are, other foods that you're eating, your other medical conditions that you have. So it really does depend.
Yeah, I guess so there's so many, diets out here. And sometimes you get confused with the information of what, one person says, this is what you need, this is what you need. You get so confused with it. I wonder if you could just give us some solid, just practical basis stuff that we got in the fridge right now that would just make it very simple, because somebody was introducing to me an alkaline diet. I said, I'm going to try this alkaline diet. I lasted for 3 days. I'm like, but could you just give us some basics about nutrition and health?
Okay. I just wanted to answer that second part of that question in regards to alcohol, in terms of drinking alcohol. Now, there have been some studies that suggest that a small amount of red wine actually may be beneficial for your cardiovascular health. Now, if you don't already drink, I wouldn't just say, okay, let's start drinking some red wine. But the studies suggest that could be beneficial somewhat. So maybe a little bit. But if you're someone who is, has problems with alcohol overall, maybe it's been considered having difficulty with alcohol as an alcoholic or whatnot, I would not, utilize that as a measure to help with heart health or whatnot. But for the most part, I would steer clear of alcohol, just overall. Water really is your friend. That's your, one of the best things for us to actually drink. And I would kind of stick with that. And I would sit down and actually talk with my primary care physician in regards to, what's optimal for your overall health. So, okay, with that being said, just, the next question that you had asked was in terms of, the foods that we eat, because I don't really like that word diet, because diet has this connotation of, okay, I'm going to eat like this for a little while, then I'm going to go back to eating the way I really want to eat. And the way that I really like to consider it is truly lifestyle modification. You really want to consider how you eat on a regular basis and change your lifestyle according to what's most optimal, for you. So if, say, for instance, you are a diabetic, I would, and so every person is, individual. I can't say absolutely for you it's going to be the same as for me, or my daughter, or for anyone else. So that's why it's important to really sit down with, if you have a nutritionist that you can talk to, or a registered dietitian, your primary care physician, to sit down and talk with. That would be something that I would say is really an individual basis, but just real quick and fast and easy. For the most part, you want to have, when you're looking at your plate, mostly fruits and vegetables. People can still have meat, if they're, non-vegetarians, and, you can still have meat. Try to have leaner pieces of meat overall. And the way that you cook your foods is important as well. So, you can have fried, fruits and vegetables, but that's not going to be as optimal for you. So it's not just what you eat, it's how the food is prepared, and then not just prepared at your table, or I'm sorry, in your kitchen or at the fast food restaurant, but how it's processed as well. So you're looking at lots of different things when it comes to food. You're looking at, like I said, what you're eating, how it's prepared, how it's processed. And then you also want to look at the amount, obviously, the quantity of food. Believe it or not, you can't overeat in salads as well. But, it's hard to do, but you can't overeat that as well. So the
Portion.
quantity and then also the quality of food is important. So all those different aspects are actually pretty important.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Mm.
Fantastic. We're seeing that some other questions coming. So this idea of holistic health. So traditionally today, you go into a doctor's office, and of course, it's not like it used to be. You maybe get 5 or 10 minutes conversation with the doctor, and they write down all their notes and everything else, and then you see them next time. Have you, yeah, your medical ministry could you talk a little bit about your approach when you're seeing patients, and what are the kind of things, because some doctors don't even allow you to ask questions, but what's your approach to help patients self-educate themselves as they entertain being with their doctors?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the big things that I like to just educate my patients about is just this concept that health is not occurring mostly in the doctor's office or hospitals. Most of your health and your wellness is going to occur at home, at work, because it's doing those little things. It's participating in those activities on a regular basis at home, in your kitchen, in your living room, when you're out playing, at work, like I mentioned, when you're at church. Those are the activities that you're participating in that play the most, have the most influence in terms of your overall health. Now, of course, there's issues when it comes to your genetics and the environment, things that you don't have control over. But those habits that you participate in on a regular basis have more to do with your health than anything that in a doctor's office is going to do within
Right.
15, 20 minutes that you're there,
Mhm.
or hours, depending on how long you wait. So what I like to do just in my practice with the Global MD practice is I enjoy that direct one-on-one patient care. I tend to spend more time with my patients, really being big about not just sitting down and talking with them or having them talk to me, but us having a conversation like this, really getting to know that person, developing that trust, because to me, trust is a social determinant of health, just like
Mm. Mm.
all
Mm.
the other things, your economic status, your family, all kinds of other things that
Mm.
play a role. Trust is vitally important.
Mm.
So who you trust can definitely influence your health and your wellness.
Mm.
That's why, trusting in God is first and foremost, no
Right.
matter what.
Right.
So, but I do believe that spending more time with someone helps in their overall health and wellness. And so what I tend to do with the Global MD is sit down, talk with someone. I purposefully don't have 10-minute appointments or 15-minute appointments. I purposefully have at least 30 minutes, sometimes to, 90 minutes. And so just because that time is very important for us to get a chance to know what the situation is that's going on, knowing your life, knowing your background, to be able to best mold a personalized plan for your overall health. Not every doctor is able to do that, but it's very important for me
Yeah.
to be able to, put forth that type of a plan, and that's really what's most optimal. What I think is most optimal for health and wellness for each individual person. What I don't like is just that whole cookie cutter commodity. Just everyone is the same. You're just going through a mill. That is not something that I think is optimal. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing. I used to participate in kind of like a cookie cutter practice that, okay, everyone gets this and everyone gets that. But I really believe that the heart of medicine, the heart of healthcare is between the physician and the patient. And all these other factors and all these different things that come in between, I think are doing just that. They're making things more muddled. They're making things more difficult. And I think that if you can really sit down and talk with someone who you trust, who has a certain amount of knowledge, who gets to know you, they can most optimally carve out a plan of action with you for your overall health. I don't consider myself to be the master of anyone. I consider myself to be a consultant, someone who helps, or a coach or a guide, who helps. But I consider other people, for their health, they're the captain of their ship, but I am a consultant in that.
Yeah. What do we need to know about, what do we need to know about the managed care system when we enter it? And somebody's asking a question about the social detriments to being in a managed care system, approaching the managed care system. I imagine maybe just about some of the patient rights that we have that we should be more knowledgeable.
Yes. That's a great question. Also, one of the things that is really important is to know that your health, your information that you give to anyone should be a priority, and that is also private. And so we have certain guidelines, like we've heard of HIPAA laws, that are important to make sure that your information isn't just sent out to anything or anyone without your permission. So that's very important. So knowing your rights is important, and having an advocate is also important as well. So, and now that's where we get a little difficult. So sometimes family members can help you to kind of get through that whole system, whether it's managed care or just dealing directly with the doctor's office. So another set of eyes and ears is important. If someone has an actual social worker that can help them to kind of steer them through different things, that would be very beneficial in and of itself. If you do have like a particular insurance plan, sometimes they'll have like a 1-800 number that people can call and they can get information. They can go to their the insurance plan's website, or they can actually write their insurance. I know that's an old school way of doing things, but there's different ways that you can actually get information. But yeah, definitely having an advocate for yourself, being your own best advocate can sometimes be a great thing, but also having another set of eyes and ears that can advocate for you is important. And I would say with elderly people, particularly, would need to have, or it's best to have an advocate, another family member or a close friend or a trusted confidant who can help them to
Yes.
some of the issues.
Yes. One last question, Dr. Rondo, is what is it when we think about holistic health? How should we? What are some of the last things that we should think when we think about holistic health and well-being? What was maybe the last thing to say that we needed to take away from this conversation about holistic health?
Well, holistic health is just looking truly at the whole person, not just focused on the physical body, but also being aware of the mental health of someone, and then also the spiritual needs that people have as well. And it's really taking into account all those different aspects of someone's overall well-being. So I think 90% of the things are focused on the physical body, what you're eating, what you're drinking, and the level of activity. And, those things are definitely important. But I think far too little attention is paid to the mental aspects of health.
Right.
And definitely far too little in terms of the spiritual aspects of health and wellness overall. But that's why, having these kind of conversations is very important, because we can talk about those other aspects of health, wellness, from a spiritual perspective. And so one of the things I do want to say is when this pandemic first came about, I actually had stopped working for my previous employer, because one of the reasons why my business is called Global MD is because God told me to go. He told me to go. And so that theme had kind of come. And so once he told me to go and I left, then he told me to be still. And so I was reading Psalm 46, verse 10 is one of my favorites. And it's, be still and know that I am God. So remembering that sometimes when it comes to, this whole concept of rest, restoration, and reconciliation is just that. That's God telling us to, in a way, sit down, I got this, be still and know that I'm God. You can rest in him. You can be restored in him, and you can be reconciled with him. So.
Absolutely powerful. You're educating us, and we want more information. We see some questions about the system that we can self-educate ourselves.
Yes.
And I'll let you know, Dr. Rhonda, that I'm going to invest. A nutritionist, a therapist, a trainer, all mental, emotional, everything, because we're worth it, aren't we? But I want to thank you so much.
Absolutely worth it. And so one of the things that I didn't really kind of go into, because I know I had mentioned it before, a little bit of how all the different things just really do affect us mentally and emotionally. But I think us as African Americans, we have been through so much, and we've been traditionally, our ancestors were used as commodities, as tools, as mules, and so there's just this whole sense of they have done this, and so maybe we can continue to do this, but no, it actually wasn't right. It's not the proper thing, and so we're still kind of recovering from that. But a part of that is just allowing us to be human.
Absolutely.
Not these workhorses, not these everlasting super women, super men, resilient in every aspect. No, we are human. We are made, from God.
Love it. That we have to end on that powerful note. We're human. I am, because we are. We're human. We're just human. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Rhonda. It's been excellent. There's been a lot of questions. We can't answer them all, but we want to thank you for coming. Thank you for your ministry of health and well-being. And thank you for the presence tonight. We'll say to everybody else, thank you for coming tonight. I know you got a lot of information out of this. We want to thank you. I want to remind you, next week, next Thursday, we will be having a forum around reparations, reparations and well-being. So come out. We will have Reverend Carlton Johnson, Alonzo Johnson come out, the Johnson brothers. We talk about reparations. So come on out. Thank you, everyone, for showing up, and we will say good night.